you know, thinking, okay, I experienced the alternator. Yeah, maybe it's stock.
I was one of those people. This guy started yelling at me.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's the story I really.
That would be your driving.
At the end of the month. I can see you. Hey there.
They have a whole bunch of
It's 60 foot long. Yeah. You're supposed to
You can measure and give us presentation.
Yeah. You know, at one point we stopped, we're like, office, I said, well, you might as well go on to Charleston.
Yeah, that's why I gotta show you this.
I'll try to.
This is, number 5.
Yelled at each other.
And he said, is that not precious?
That's. What you yelling to do is.
I know, your kids. So.
They yell at each other in private.
Nobody in.
Radford.
Come out good. How are you?
All right, we've got, I've got to wait till 5:30.
I've had all my shots.
So I'm.
This college degree.
They were having.
It's a major.
I'm antibiotics.
I mean, just, you know. Yeah.
That'd be more advantageous salary wise versus graduating and getting like a certificate, you know.
He was worried.
I thought, okay, this is a year is like, he's got a plan, right? And so,
Yeah, right. I'm just appreciative that he's coming back.
yeah, no, I yeah.
And the teachers qualified.
Yeah, we're gonna move for next week. So a couple of exams.
I can see having getting somebody promoted.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, she did.
I was over there. I got a couple lumberland on the front yard. I'm like,
That's what I said.
he's a bold man. I'm not so sure. I think there may be some.
You know, she says he doesn't have the free, she's on social. So she's
All of our kids.
I know, it's like a
I think all
she did, I just rolled her.
policy. Because I think there's something like suggests as long as you serve study.
Really, they try to say it.
I'm certified.
Like, put your mask on.
Oh, I looked at it for a
She's got really good friends with the daughter. Yeah, it's funny how you don't even.
I know. Yeah. So that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
You're gonna do your email. Sure.
That is coming.
Just want to say situation for.
Yeah, he's trying to get a job with them, but
I remember, I remember hearing about it on Sarah, whatever her name was.
Oh, Sarah.
She tweeted out, she used to live tweet the county office. And I got,
Is Martha? Oh, we never, I know.
the countdown on.
So let's see, this week,
And tried to.
I eight plus five.
Stand back.
I wonder there for a while, but.
What's next? I've got exceptional issues, you know. Summer events that I've had. It's really fun. Dealing with
high note. You can go out on a high note.
I know, right?
Brilliant to get
You're gonna do you.
them major in medical.
And I do some work with Jason. And also that's like.
Brian's still doing anything?
Salad bar, I didn't have any plans to put in. For sure. And he might help you.
From that room right there.
Well, you know,
Yeah, lettuce and tomatoes and turkey
See, I just assume just hold out. I don't want to see the good stuff. That's where I have the problem. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. I'm all on my way for 4, but I had my phone. Just like.
I know.
Because I think that you will appreciate it.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
This is taking me now. This is you.
Is that here?
Just closed for a while.
Beautiful.
It's like.
Jason's out there. I just had to share that. Horoscope, places like that. Just
I'm a greenways.
If you get it Thank you.
thank you.
Surprise, I don't.
Back here, I'll try to set it up so.
I can handle this.
I already got one.
Mr. Peters. The floor is yours.
I have 2 more minutes.
I swear, I could say,
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We will get started 2 minutes early so we can keep Debbie
we have
happy.
people here, we have one person downstairs.
Okay,
So,
so we're going to call to order. Chairman Moretz, would you like to call your board to order?
Absolutely.
Angela's back.
Angela, you call the roll, please?
Mr. Butler.
Here.
Mr. Linden.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Greenway.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ray. Mr. Butler.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Under item B of our agenda is opening remarks. I'll begin today by welcoming the school board to our joint meeting. It's been a long time. We've got a lot to talk about, and I hope it's going to be a very productive evening. I know there's going to be several updates, and I just asked Mr. Moretz if, I know that the members of my board have asked about Weaver High School, so we can just get a brief snapshot of where that is and start on time, all that good stuff. I know you're still waiting on the money part, and that's okay, but we're talking about the project as a whole. So, but I'm glad that we're here together, and I'm looking forward to a productive meeting. Mr. Moretz?
Perfect. No, couldn't said it better myself. I hope we have some good, good constructive conversations, and we all know why we're here. So I'm thankful that we're all able to get together in person, and so welcome everybody. And with that being said, Jason, I can turn it over to.
We'll move on to item C, our discussion of the 3 capital projects. And like I said, we just get a snapshot on Bird, and as we go into that, it'd be great.
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay?
There's a mic right there.
Okay, you want the microphone?
Yeah, just a room,
Floor downstairs.
just for your information, this room is just big enough to have to use the microphones. So if you're sitting at a desk and can speak into the microphone, otherwise people in this end of the room won't hear you, meaning me. So just some housekeeping.
Sure. So the status of Williamburg High School. We've recently, about 2 weeks ago, received 80% complete drawings for the project. And so the project is now at 80% drawings. The Avis and Hughes send the project out to their subcontractors to start their bidding on the project. We were expecting bids to be in next week from the subcontractors. They've requested a 1-week extension because there's so much on the bid market right now. They want to spend an extra week refining their numbers so we can tighten up the price as much as possible. So we're looking for those numbers to hit Avis on May 26th, and they will likely send that information to me the Friday before. So that's where we're at, and we'll be reviewing those numbers, I'm sure, through Memorial Day.
But it is on time to, as far as construction, as far as starting.
Start time is, we are good for start time. I would be lying to you if I said we were going to be finishing on the scheduled time.
You understand?
Just a quick snapshot, we're looking at some delays in, from the time you order steel. Right now, it's about 14 months. So, the project was supposed to end in the end of December 2022. Well, we order the steel in, say, June 1st. It's not going to be available until August of 2022. So you can see how that's going to push the timeline through the spring and possibly into the summer of 23. Just that one item alone. So are you ready for the start of the presentation on first?
Mr. Rapp.
Yeah, Chris, when y'all did the selections for the teams you selected, did y'all do a guaranteed maximum price?
We did an initial guaranteed maximum price.
Yeah.
Which is not a fixed price at the bid time. It's an estimate of what the project's going to be. And then because of the scope of that work, renovation/new addition, it was recommended to us to use that initial guaranteed maximum. So our initial guaranteed maximum was right around $21 million. And what happens is 80% drawings, they actually send the bid out or the project out to the street for the subcontractors, and they'll come back in with a GPM. And in past history, it's been relatively very close from what we understand when they come back in. This time, we're not expecting it to be very close to the initial guaranteed maximum. We have a feeling it's going to be a little bit more expensive this time.
Okay, due to the conditions we're dealing with right now?
Yes, this is completely with the conditions that we're dealing with on the market.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. North?
What was the guarantee, excuse me, what was the guaranteed maximum?
It was right around 21 million. I don't have the exact number.
If that's what's in the CIP.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, would you guys like to start with Cundiff and Glen Cove? I have this thing right here, don't I?
He said, you might have to turn it on.
Do what, Debbie?
I said, you may have to turn it on. Is it on? Look on the side.
There you go. All right.
There you go.
Okay.
It delays a little bit.
There we go. Okay, so this is the existing CIP that was adopted in March this year. As you can see on the CIP, we're having a Wayburn High School renovation. We also have the Cundiff, Glen Cove, and Burke projects. And the timeline at that time when we anticipated the funding to be available for the construction to begin. So just a little bit of background on both schools. Glen Cove was occupied in 71, Cundiff was 72. Both of them are right around 60,000 square feet. They are of the old open floor plan design, which I believe some of you have been able to tour those two schools and see what we mean by open plan. Basically, it's 4 to 5 classrooms per pod. So you have 4 or 5 classrooms of kids, 70 to 120 kids learning in one area. Teachers have separated the rooms by using bookcases and paneling and things like that to get a little bit of privacy and to cut down some of the noise. Glen Cove is currently enrolled at 412. We have a current capacity of 470, and in our recommendations, we're trying to get to planned capacity of 500 using the DOE recommendations on square footage, which, just so you know, it's roughly 700 square foot per classroom on most cases. Kindergarten and pre-K are a little bit more, about 900 square feet per classroom. We have a current enrollment of 500 at Cundiff, capacity of 585, and we're trying to plan for a capacity of 600 in our CIP. We do have some special programs at both schools that some of the other schools do not have. We have 4 special education classrooms at one school, 3 at the other, a couple of remediation, Title I, ELL, OTPT. So right now, in the existing conditions, the classroom challenges we have at Glen Cove and Cundiff is basically the classroom spaces are about 28% smaller than what the Department of Education recommended. Second through fifth grade is about 13 smaller, and that's at Glen Cove. Cundiff is 25% and 10% smaller than the BDOE recommendations. Again, this is open classrooms, shared classrooms. Buildings are 50 years old and still have asbestos-containing materials within their buildings. We do have failing break integrity in multiple areas at each facility. Structural block is showing significant cracking in multiple areas, and we're watching those in the maintenance department by sealing and going back to inspect those seals. We have window frames that are corroded at both schools, and sealant repairs are continuously deteriorating. Most interior products are beyond expected useful life according to the moment guidebook. And these items include VCT, terrazzo, porcelain, ceramic tile, wood trim. Doors, some have been replaced. Windows, ceilings, toilet fixtures, and casework. The water closets and sinks are all original. In 1971, they have about a 30-year life expectancy. Buildings are not sprinkled. All condenser piping is original and beyond life expectancy at both schools. Existing piping is in poor condition and needs to be replaced. So we're talking about storm, sewer, sewer under the slabs, sewer on the second floor. It's just all antiquated and old and falling apart, and we're replacing it as we can. New water heater and water circulation pumps are 10 years old with a life expectancy of 15 years at Glen Cove. We have pressure boosters are from 1971, and one is not even operational right now. We have existing boilers and pumps that are 12 to 14 years old with a 25-year life expectancy and 20 years old at Cundiff. We have 55 water source heat pumps to cool the building. 10 of these units have been replaced in the last 3 years. I'm getting ready to make a request this week, but we have to replace 6 more at Glen Cove. And they're just old and beyond life expectancy. One good thing about these water source heat pumps is they can be salvaged when we move into a new facility. Like I said, we're replacing these as needed. Kind of has a cooling tower, is 28 years old, and it's past its life expectancy as well. We have existing switchboards, are original to the buildings. Panel boards are original. Most schools have new panels to accommodate basically just new receptacles within the buildings. And all the cabling is still original with the exception of those new outlets. Light fixtures are currently adequate, but they would need to be replaced with LED during any renovation and new construction. The existing PA system is and neither site has a generator.
That's enough.
This type of questions.
Who brought this guy in? He got a bad mood.
I don't know why.
Hey, you want the real bad news?
We're good.
Somebody pull the plug. Oh, there it is. So basically what I talked about just a few minutes ago, one pod includes 3 to 5 classrooms, and that's roughly 60 to 125 students. Students have to traverse 2 or 3 classrooms to get to a destination in some places. And that's while teachers are teaching their class in those spaces. Typically one set of restrooms, and they're located within the teaching areas. A boys' room may be in one classroom and girls is in the other, for instance. So it's a higher noise levels. It reduces the student learning, lower speech perception ability, and that just means ability to hear words and sentences, slower response times, and those being taught in traditional classrooms. And the students' brains can just become exhausted trying to concentrate in this kind of environment. Safety, we have a concern about safety with these open classrooms because the shelter in place results in a higher number of group students in any location. So for Glen Cove, we've had Thomas Litton and Associates did a study for us, a programming study for us last year, spring of 2020. But basically that program tells us how many classrooms do we need, what the classrooms are used for, what all these extra spaces are used for, and what the square footage we need for those. So they concluded that what they did is they provided us a renovation and a new construction option. So with the renovation, the study determined that in order to be 10 square feet needs to be renovated, but we also need to add an additional 17,000 square feet of new construction. So the consultant used $305 a square foot last spring. So their cost with construction, well, just construction cost was $23.5 million at that cost. We used an in-house number that we based off experience of our last couple of projects, our most current projects, and what's actually going on in the state of Virginia at that time. okay, before the mess we're in now has happened. We used $220 a square foot for renovation and addition, and our project price was about $17 million. So you can ignore the soft costs. Renovation, the renovation cost 91% of a new construction cost would be. Typically, when we hit the 60% mark of renovation versus new construction, we tend to go new construction. There's no point in utilizing your funds to renovate a 50-year-old facility when you could buy a new facility for just about 10% more of the project. So new construction, 76,000 square foot facility at Glen Cove, the consultant used $340 a square foot, and it came in a little over $25 million. We used $250 a square foot, again, based off our most recent experience and what was going on in the state of Virginia at the time. And we came up with a total project construction cost of $19 million. And this is the same numbers for kind of a little bit higher. You're asking for a little bit more square footage. But renovation versus construction was 98% according to the consultant, 91% for Roanoke County Schools. So as you can see, our renovation and new addition cost was $20 million, and a brand new construction cost at $250 a square foot was almost $22 million.
Chris, do you recall when Mason's Cove was built? Was it 2008?
2011.
In 2011, that building, if you've ever seen Mason's Cove, it's a beautiful elementary school. I mean, I think it's like a model elementary school. It was built for $12 million. 12 million, brand new building. It kind of shows you where the costs have gone.
We should have all built the other two at the same time.
You got that right.
That was about a 52,000 square foot facility, Mason's Cove was.
How much?
52,000 square feet.
So I want to go back in time a little bit, and I remember when the Blue Ribbon Commission was started, and there was this extensive study that brought in a lot of community members, a lot of school people, and they put together a plan for rebuild and priorities to make sure that all districts were looked at equally and had a fair look at, because there's always some concern about, one district's getting more than another. But what happened to that? I truly don't know what happened with that process or that plan for going through with construction and stuff.
Let me try answering that one. One of the things that I noticed when I first came on the board 6 years ago is that the CIP made no sense to me whatsoever. When I looked at the projects that were done and how they were selected, to be quite honest, and I think every one of my board members will agree, I think the board member who had the most juice got projects done. That's just pure and simple what I think happened. And so if you look at the CIP and the way things were chosen, it was pretty much based on what those board members worked out. We changed that, and we changed that before the William Byrd project. We made an attempt to take the politics, and when I use the word politics, we wanted to try and get board members out of the whole selection of projects. We didn't think it was the right thing to do. So what we did is that we turned that over to the superintendent. We said that you select the projects based on instructional needs. What are the projects that you need to make sure that the instructional needs are met in this county? That's why there's a whole new CIP and the order. So we left it up. We wanted to stay out of it. There was too many projects that we thought that just didn't make sense. How they got selected?
I think the Blue Ribbon Commission, though, was a little bit different process. And that might have been that, it was.
Right.
If I could say, I think that Mr. Ray can answer this. I mean, I went back and I was very thankful for Ms. Owens, who sent me a whole bunch of information that I was able to review. It looks like that the Blue Ribbon Committee, their findings, I can't dispute what the findings were in 1999. I got some of it pulled up here. And they went through phase one. It looked like they accomplished phase one, and then everybody went to sleep. So I was trying to figure out what happened after that. I mean, can you bring any light to that? Because it looked like what they were doing through the Blue Ribbon Committee was basically what you've come back to now, that it's being selected by needs, not by which board member throws the biggest tantrum.
Well, then I guess we fixed it.
But I guess I'm trying to figure, because I went back through here and was looking, because we've had a lot of conversation about Burton. Burton was addressed in phase 2, but everything in phase 2 was never addressed. So, I mean, can you shed any light on that?
Well, I think you answered most of that because it went back to, actually, we did have different phases, and I was, when I was there, and I was chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee at the time, co-chair or chair at the time. And when we looked at it, we had one of the best folks that he's passed away now. Can't think of his name now, but anyway, he put together, and we visited all the schools. And it got to be, you get through the phase, and then, here we're going to get into the second phase. Well, that's when it all fell apart, and people started, well, I want this done, I want that done. And it's very obvious with Bird that it never got really finished. All it did was get a facade, and that's it. Let's move on. We want something else.
It's been renovated like 3 times, right, Tim?
Yeah, I'm waiting my turn.
Well, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah,
out.
you are. Thank you. No, you are.
But that is really what happened, Martha, is the way that was set up. It was very well organized.
The Blue Ribbon
Went
Commission
out
was
and
awesome.
visited all the
plan
schools.
was great.
We spent a ton of time. And go ahead.
It's hard to explain what previous boards did and why they did what they did. We tried to fix that.
So what I am curious about is somewhere in that time frame, Penn Forest Elementary got walls.
They got walls.
Amen.
They got walls, but that didn't really solve the situation.
It doesn't, but it helps because my heart goes out to the teachers.
Oh, well,
And-
when, I had 2 board of supervisors members go over and see how we've weaved our way through classrooms and classes that were having class while
not
the kids were
perfect.
walking through, and it just doesn't solve it.
Yeah, I
If
would
you're gonna
agree.
Do it right. They should have done it
It
right.
helps.
And I even got a price, how could we do it differently? And the way they got the mechanical system, the way they have it, it was gonna be like $500,000 just to go on the outside and try to do something. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I might ask a question. We looked at it, and it was a short-term fix to help mitigate the open interruptions. And I guess I asked this question to Ken because in my business where I came from, if that was a problem, you addressed it system-wide if it took you a few years, especially when it came to safety. Well, this is instruction. And so I would agree with my colleague, Ms. Hooker. Why wasn't the other 2 schools done at the same time to put walls up? We're 21 years later, and they still have that problem in both of those schools, Mr. Chair. And some teachers have told me at least they need walls. So I've just always wondered to myself, after hearing that Penn Forest had them, how come those other 2 schools?
And expanding on, Mr. Butzer's point,
Short term.
we'd have to take a time machine and go back and ask previous boards. So, I'm not sure how, I like the discussion. I'm just not sure how useful the discussion is for us moving forward about why things weren't done 15 or 20 years ago,
Well,
It is frustrating. I mean, I'm sure there's things, Ms. Ray, there's probably some things previous board of supervisors, you're wondering why you didn't do this, why you didn't do
Well,
that.
certainly, but it's always good to at least to have an appreciation of the history of anything before you move forward. At least you have questions at least answered.
And I think also, excuse me, I think also just to reflect on what was seen as a priority, those many years ago, because that was a great commission, Mike. And see, why is that not still a priority? And if it was a priority then, even though it wasn't a total fix to build walls, why that wasn't ever done for Vinton and the Catawba district in those 2 elementary schools. I was just curious about that. And while it's not a fix, I don't think anyone, or it's not a permanent solution, it's not the best scenario, it would sure help for those individual classrooms, in my opinion. And I would say that probably the Penn Forest Elementary teachers are thankful for those walls too.
Mr. Chairman, so there is so much to unwrap here, but it's good discussion. And one of the best things that happened to our board, and I'm just going to be honest, and he's wrong on a lot of issues, but Mr. Butzer came along, and I'm going to give him credit, and I'm kidding about being wrong, but
Obviously, I was fired. I'm leaving.
we're getting rid of him in a couple months. But he came along and he helped us reset the narrative on the schools, and not, I think we get in these positions and it's, what can I do in Benton? What can I do in Benton? What can I do in Windsor Hills? What can I do in Cave Spring? And so BCAT gets kicked down the road forever because we're pushing our agendas up front in our communities. That's one of the issues with BCAT. But Mr. Butzer reset the narrative and it came in with some operations experience and different things. And he also asked Dr. Nicely to go out, and that's what I've got right here. I brought it with me. The commission of our school system and the group that was put together to identify these schools of need, rather than me lobbying for Benton, Mr. Lennon lobbying for Hollins, and so on and so forth. So to go back to the commission, the Blue Ribbon Commission, and then where we are at with this list here is Mike and his group. I thought that was a wonderful project. But you know what happens?
I wonder if they're similar, if what you have is similar to.
No, and that's where I'm going with. So you started out with the Blue Ribbon Commission and you ended up with Dr. Nicely's assessment and group, the whole group and committee for here. But what happens in the interim of that 20, 25 years span is 5 board members, and that plan doesn't get followed the way that plan was set up. Now, and so I don't know if you may remember this because y'all kid me a lot, but the first thing I did when I came on the school board, the very first meeting was a CIP meeting. It was a work session. And we were identifying the schools for a 10-year CIP. Very disappointed that we listed Cave Spring High School as the only school for that 10 years. Remember that Mike and Jason were on here. And so we only had, and I'm like, are we going to send that to the board? So we learned, we were all new, but we thought that was a little disingenuous. But then my question after that is nobody is talking about William Byrd. Everybody thought it had been done. Now I think we've all been through that school and we see. So my point is that the last 20, 25 years, that plan, as good as it was and as genuine as it was meant to be, we got in the, I'll call us as the boards, got in the way of that plan and changed the dynamics.
Let me give you an example of a project that shouldn't have been done. And I'll probably make some previous board members pretty angry with me. But if you look at the Northside Middle Gymnasium, competition gym, beautiful gym. I wouldn't have done that. I would not have done that project. I would have probably done one of the elementary schools or at least half of an elementary school. But that's an example of how it made no sense to me whatsoever. So we fixed it. I can't answer what happened with previous boards. Makes no sense to even go back there and answer that. We don't know.
Mr. Chair, I got a couple of questions before we
Mr.
go.
Chairman,
Go ahead. I might. Chris, this question's for you.
Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to understand the numbers. I see William Byrd is in the CIP at 23.3, I think. Double check me on that. And
yeah,
That's total project budget, including our soft costs.
right, but you made a mention that the maximum contract was 21 million. So was it 21 without the soft cost, but you were mentioning that?
Yes, sir. That's the contract with Davis.
Fine, I stand corrected. So if I'm hearing you right, depending on what the subcontractors come, there may be some change in these figures. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you have any idea?
No, sir.
You don't have. Okay, that's a fair question. Now let's talk about VDOE just a minute. Virginia Department of Education recommendations, are those mandated or are they recommendations by the state superintendent of education for classroom construction? Mandated or recommended, which is it?
These
It's
recommendations.
recommendations.
It's based on what though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instruction.
Right.
The best instruction for the students.
I understand. Now, let me just say this. One of the problems we had with the recommendation or mandates, whatever you want to call them, is they're not funded by the state of Virginia. Now, I'm hopeful, maybe some people in this room aren't hopeful, but I'm hopeful that the School Committee on Modernization and Construction, which had its first meeting after 8 years, finally sat down with the committee mandated by the General Assembly, met on April 1. They had a 40-minute organizational meeting. And like a lot of committees, they said we need more data. And they sent a note out to all the schools they were supposed to and report back on June 3rd at their next meeting. They want to see the whole scope of what the needs are. And boy, they're probably going to get a big picture of data. And hopefully they'll have a paper to the next governor in December of what's needed going forward, because this is a statewide problem. And I don't disagree that you should have standards. And if they're recommended, so be it, but you got to put some money to it. The state of Virginia needs to do that. I don't care whether we get more or less than what somebody else gets. We need to get something. And I think
I agree with you 100%.
This conversation needs to be escalated to the General Assembly delegation and members, not only on that committee today, that are made up of Senator Stanley and others, and led by Senator McClellan, but it also needs to occur in conversations with the school board from the General Assembly members. And so when we put our legislative agenda together, where's Mr. Lubeck?
I'm right behind you.
With Mr. Lubeck, you know, we may want to engage you all's conversation with us when we talk to these folks on that subject, because folks, I'm gonna tell you something right now, the squeaky wheel gets the grease sometimes, and we've got a new administration coming in, and education has always been important in the state of Virginia, and it needs to give some money to the schools and the school system.
Well, I totally agree. It's just not, it's not fair to have the localities in the cities burdened with the expense of building schools. And that's who has to do it, because the state doesn't do it. I agree.
Well, I'm going to add one more thing to that. I've shared with my board and actually a couple of the school board members, but I've listened to conversation over the last few months about, I know there's been conversation in Richmond about a large $3 billion referendum to spend money. And I keep hearing from people that, well, Roanoke County will get none of that because we do a good job. We keep our schools up. We've done renovations in most of our high schools, and you know, we overall considered we've done a good job with our schools. And while that may be true, I think the conversation needs to turn as we, and again, I've talked with Tim and with Jason, but you know, we need to be working together when it comes to our legislative agenda, because we do have a need, and it is our CTE. We need to be talking about the dire need of that CTE building, where it sits in the floodplain, that we need. You know, we don't have the most modern school when it comes to that. And I think that's the part that we need to be pressing forward when it comes to our delegates in Richmond, trying to get money for that, rather than concentrating on, you know, we have pretty impressive buildings. We just did Cave Spring, and look how good it looks. And, you know, we keep saying, well, if that money is passed, we will get very little of it. Well, we may get very little of it because maybe we're not focusing where we need to be focusing our attention. And again, that is the Burton Center. But, you know, I've said it again to a couple of you, but as we put our legislative agenda together for this year, I would like for all 10 of us to be on the same page and working jointly with our legislators in Richmond. I think it'll be very important.
As I understand the $3 billion that you're talking about, it's not based on how good your schools are. It's based on the affordability of the locality. So there's
Correct.
an index. So it has nothing to do with what your buildings look like. It's where they see you with respect to being able to afford school construction.
Right. But there's also other conversations beyond that. And I guess that's what I'm saying is I think a lot of times we've just, again, I'm in conversations where, you know, we do such a good job. We'll never get any of that money. We need to change that dialogue, because we do have a dire need, and it's going to cost us. You can put 50 million on a piece of paper, but as I share with Jason, I share with Tim, I don't see how you can do it for less than 65. I mean, I think the project to be done correctly, we're going to have to really focus on what that's going to look like. And it's going to be very difficult to do that on our own. And I hope that we will, again, work together to push for some, something out of Richmond.
And to that point on economic, that's the one thing we can't lose sight of. If the state, if we're relying on the state, may or may not be here, and I agree, we need to go after that money. But one of the biggest economic drivers we have in this county right now is how well we have done with our schools and the conditions of those schools. And so one thing in our work session that I told our other board members that I think we work so well together, and I'm proud, even though we will have disagreements just like anybody, family or anybody, we've done really well at, not just my district, what do you need? And so when we think of projects that are going on in other phases, we try to identify them in all districts, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that we can't do, and you just mentioned Penn Forest Elementary, and we can't just say, and I've heard this, and it just, when I hear it, it just goes all over me for Cundiff and Glen Cove. And Glenville Elementary, I think, also has this, because you got to walk through classrooms to get to classrooms.
Yeah.
And so that bothers me, to put up walls. If I hear put up walls again, I'm going to lose my mind. Please, we've got to do a better, we've got to construct these schools, not put up walls. And, and I get brick and mortar, I hear that brick and mortar never teaches a child, but it's also prideful in your community. It's the economic piece. It's the educational piece. It's so many things other than that brick and mortar. So I just don't want us to think of putting up walls. I want us to construct.
But it could be a temporary Band-Aid, a temporary help.
Well, but sometimes when you do temporary, you end up with what Bird and Cundiff look like, and Glen Cove. And
one of the options, or one of the things that is not a statewide problem, is that open floor concept, because as the state superintendent was here last year and didn't realize that there were still open concept floor plans in use in Virginia. So that's not a statewide problem. We may have the only two in the state.
Sure. Maybe they'll give us some money. You never know. Mr. Chair, let me make a comment here. Is there anyone at the school staff or board that are interested, or are they already signed up to listen to these meetings of the Committee on Modernization and Construction? Because I'd like to engage somebody to contact MJ Jackson at senate.virginia.gov. And I've got the phone number here, 804-698-7450. I would like to solicit you folks, someone from your team or two, to listen into these calls along with me, because I plan to, and I think more than my ears, other ears are just as well welcome.
Are these calls for like subject matter experts?
These are committee hearings. You don't talk, you just listen to what's going on, and you get the straight scoop right live and at the time of the meeting, which the next one is supposed to be June 3rd. And I'm gonna tell you what, this is setting the pace forward to have, after 8 years of talking about doing something and kicking the can down the road.
It should be.
We need to, and that way we can speak fluidly, probably even more so than what many delegates do, because if you're not on the committee, you don't know what's going on necessarily.
And we also don't know, with all the rescue money being dumped in the state, what ultimately may happen to that. So, I think there's a lot of opportunities that we just need to be focused on what our needs are. And like I said, I think the Burton Center is a need that is, it's a need for the entire county.
Yeah.
It's not just one district. And I think that, again, we need to be all 10 on the same page, pushing that agenda.
I think, Jason, you mentioned it when we met. Is there one board member around here that doesn't think we need to do something with BCAT? That's the first question, and I'm all for, it's a great idea, Phil. We need to lobby the state, but I also think, at the end of the day, we also need to have a plan B if the state falls through. What's that going to look like, right? Go back 20, 30 years. Republicans, Democrats, they can talk about education, but at the end of the day, what are they really doing for us? Unfunded mandates on our side, unfunded mandates on your side. What can we control? That's what I'd like to discuss, and, let's get together, and lobby the state. I think it would be beneficial if we were, on the same page there. I mean, I hope, and maybe our counterparts too, maybe it's getting, other localities involved in that too. I mean, they need some pressure.
I couldn't agree more, Jason, and so there's some that won't be to mention the word regional, but I'm a regional minded kind of guy. It's a lot of energy sometimes. At least I think what we should do, Mr. Chair, is get a county, schools, and businesses together to have a conversation about what we got at BCAT today, where we want to go with it, and enlist those folks' effort as well when it comes to the politics of the state of Virginia. It doesn't cost anything except some people's time to have some discussion in a roundtable meeting, to invite selected businesses to see whether there's any energy or synergy or interest in talking about it. A simple lunch with some sandwiches and then a discussion and a presentation, especially I'm talking more specifically now about VCAT, and see where it goes. Because many of these businesses also are those that support the state government elected officials, if you know what I mean.
Well, let's see. I was gonna say, I want to let Chris get through his slides, and then we can come back through and have our discussion after BCAT's presented.
Well, your comment, we do have a general advisory committee where we have businesses on that Burton committee, and they are involved, and that's where we got apprenticeships. That's where, this is what's happening is some of those businesses are involved. Maybe you want a bigger magnitude of this, but I'm just saying we do have input from businesses on this committee. And, and Mike Altizer was here that started our apprentice program with the Water Authority.
It might be maybe a good idea, Ken, at the next GAC meeting, extend an invitation to, a board of supervisors counterparts to sit in on one of those.
Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we kind of do that over the last year with that study we just did? Didn't we kind of get some input from, we had other folks in?
You're talking about the one through the workforce.
Development
And
Board.
so there's Dr. Nicely, we've asked him for the temperatures, some of the other superintendents and I'm not saying we can't get there, but I think I want to be a part of a board that solves this problem for BCAT today and gets it done and gets it started in 2023. I think it's, for the people and the citizens of Roanoke County, educationally, it's beneficial, especially for students that want an alternative to start a four-year education, for workforce development, right? I mean, so I just, if we want to study while we're building, I'm okay with that. But I think it's time to, to get this one going.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, one more thing. When I toured Burton several weeks ago, I was totally impressed with how much partnership there was. There's an incredible amount of partnership. I think it's on a smaller level, but if there was really buy-in to whole departments, it could be a different ballgame in my mind. And I really think that's where you were headed, Mr. Norman.
I'm looking at a specialized, over and above what's being done today, because at the end of the day, here's the question hanging over this room with regards to Burton. And I'm sorry, we haven't let Chris finish his conclusions. Would you want to do that first before we go on?
Well, I was gonna let him get through his.
The chair wanted to get you back on track, so I don't want to derail
I'm
you
gonna have to
here.
cut your mic off in a minute.
Discussion is good. I mean, these are good discussions.
My point is this.
He's going to get to Burton here at some point.
The larger question is, how do you market this to the taxpayers and citizens of Roanoke County? You build momentum, and you build it with businesses on a specialized study. If they have the interest to want to buy in on a concept, it makes it stronger. And another thing too is when we get to it, you'll see the economic impact of Burton. I can't tell you what the economic impact is because I haven't measured it, nor probably has anyone else, but there is an economic dollar impact. And that is something that you can use to sell that concept when the time comes. And so those 2 points I'd like to leave you with. Think about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I'm gonna set Mr. Lowe back up with the conversation. First, I just want to chime in for a moment, I guess the superintendent, and say how much I appreciate the discussion, because we have a room full of public officials who are passionate about the educational needs of Roanoke County, and there's big problems to solve, and but we've got folks who are driven and committed to working together to do that. So thank you for the discussion. I did want to circle back around to the conversation around, in terms of setting Mr. Lowe back up, in terms of why we are where we are in terms of looking at these schools, and get back to the question around the Blue Ribbon study and so forth. So when we were charged by the school board to really look at our 27 facilities and really look at it on a basis of instruction, the needs there, looking at all the studies that we've done in terms of assessment of the infrastructure that's in place, truly what are the condition of those things, and really making that priority list based on those factors, not anything else. We actually started by going back to those studies. We looked at the Blue Ribbon studies, and what did they say back then, right? What did they say when we, hired the OWPR study, a few years ago? And we asked them those same questions, like, where did Burton go, right? In terms of all that. So that's exactly why, we're back to the table here, because whereas the Burton Center was not even on our CIP, a few years ago in previous iterations, it is now front and center. It's near the top. We put these elementary schools that, to your all's questions about, why weren't those done back then? Well, they were recognized as priorities, and that's why they are where they are. Northside Middle School, Mr. Buster mentioned that gym addition was put on, so people think, oh, some great things were done at Northside Middle School, which is, it's a beautiful gym and so forth, but the rest of the school, wasn't touched. And so, that's on where it should be. So I feel really confident, just want to reassure members of both boards that I think the priorities that were identified in the past, that's why you see them back where they should be. So I feel really confident that we're on the right track in terms of the priorities that we've identified. So some concluding remarks around the two elementary schools, and then Mr. Lowe's going to talk about Burton Center.
So get back to the conclusion on Glen Cove and Conduct, but obviously, as you saw, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing are all existing systems that they're all end of life expectancy and need to be replaced. The open floor concept doesn't provide students and teachers an adequate learning environment. The cost of renovation versus new construction is well above 60% cost differential, and new construction will offer opportunities for a better building envelope to ensure maximum efficiency when it comes to energy conservation and usage. It's also going to allow for more flexibility with determining the availability of green energy options. And just to go back to real quick what Dr. Lacey was just talking about, the structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, those that really set the foundation for this new CIP. Back in 2016, one of our former director of operations spearheaded a facilities assessment study with the architecture firm out of Pulaski named OWPR, and we have a binder where they inspected and gave an evaluation of every one of our mechanical systems, plumbing systems, electrical systems, structural systems, and that was really the foundation of what started this new CIP, just so that everyone's aware we had that study. So we're talking about Burton for the first time this evening. Occupied in 1962, 89,000 square feet, sits on about 30 acres. It's located in the city of Salem, and the maximum capacity of that facility is 500. Some immediate concerns to just address right off the front. Obviously, it's an aging facility. It's about 60 years old. Many systems have surpassed the life expectancy. We need additional student capacity. They're turning kids away every year now because they don't have the capacity to handle all the wants for their programs. Like I said, the programs are growing and they're filled to the max. Additional programs, or they want to expand their program base that they have right now, add some additional programs. And when they do that, what they're doing is condensing the existing programs they have. So they're reducing the amount of square footage that those programs have when they need the larger square footage. There's just a lack of room on the site for potential expansion. And I'll show you that here in just a minute. But back to that OWPR study, this is some of the concerns that came out. Basically, they're 60 years old. There's asbestos in the building, same as kind of in Glen Cove. There's structural cracks are appearing and they're being monitored. We have multiple exterior doors which lack accessible ingress egress. There is no elevator in building A, which will be the main building up by the road. Most areas in the building and restrooms are not accessible to the latest ADA standards. Signage, hardware, drinking fountains throughout the facility do not comply. Security for buildings B and C are solely dependent on fence gates and locks. There's a vestibule in building A that provides minimal visibility from the office, which is a security concern as well. Multiple styles of windows exist throughout the facility, but many of the frames are corroded and sealant repairs continuously deteriorate. Most doors are original doors on the facility, and the hollow metal frames and doors themselves are starting to rust. Mechanical plumbing concerns, as you can imagine, a building that's 60 years old, water closets, sinks, lavatories, and urinals are all originally installed in the 60s. The building B boiler is from 1978. Piping is insulated black steel, and the expectancy was 30 years old. Controls are a mix of old pneumatic controls by water causing backups and slow flow in the facility. We have a fire alarm system that needs to be upgraded and replaced. There are limited smoke detectors and horn strobe alarms. We're not up to current code. It's a grandfathered system. We do not have an existing generator. Site lighting is antiquated and needs to be replaced. The parts are no longer available for the existing site lighting that we have, and the existing transformers on site are showing rust and age. Civil concerns, this is a biggie. We have a shared entrance drive, which causes traffic congestion on the main road in the mornings. We need to do some entrance modifications that could relieve those congestion issues. Concrete walkways come up and are in poor condition. Existing site railing does not meet current code. Concrete curb and gutter are in poor condition. The majority of the site is either in a floodway, a 100-year floodplain, or a 500-year floodplain. In a floodway, no structures are allowed to be built within the floodway. Parking is permitted, but not for long-term storage. 100-year floodplain, structures are allowed to be built within a 100-year floodplain with written permission from the governing body. Strict development and construction guidelines must be followed. Example, the finished floor elevation must be 2 feet above the floodplain elevation. 500-year floodplain, there's no building restrictions. The adjacent property belonging to the Veterans Administration has an 80 to 100 foot of rise from the Burton property line to the building pad. So as you see by this map, the buildings up in the top center, those are in the 100-year floodplain right now. The 100-year floodplain cuts through the existing building A. The striped area to the left is the floodway, and then the really light blue is in the 500-year floodplain. The adjacent property to the right, you can see that there's about an 80 to 100 foot rise in elevation to the pad up above, which the VA uses. In order to get any kind of usable land there, we're talking about walls about the size of what you see over at Slate Hill, down or the South Peak down here. So initially, we began our adoption of CIP in December, and we were using about $270 a square foot for this project because it's a little bit more special than in elementary schools in terms of construction. So we're using a little bit higher construction. $500,000 for a 150,000 square foot estimate. That 150,000 square feet was an estimate based on we did not have a complete program yet for what the new Burton Center would look like. In February, we started getting that new program to come together, and we're sitting at about 176,410 square feet for a facility that meets all the needs that BCAT's looking for right now. So when you had a $270 a square foot for that, we were looking at a $47 million project before construction and soft costs combined. Now, what I've shown in March and May is the inflation of construction costs just this spring. And these come from some of the vendors we use, architects and contractors. And it could, we're looking at $100 a square foot every month that the cost of construction is going up. And you can see that just by walking into Lowe's. We were in there just last week, for instance. We wanted to buy some plywood for a roof we're doing over at Northside. It was $40 a sheet. And we said, no way, we'll go somewhere else. He said it's going to $60 a board tomorrow. So we went to Home Depot, it was already $60 a board. Went back to Lowe's and bought every piece of plywood they had at $40 so we could store it. So just that's the amount of cost. You're paying $9 for a 2x4 stud right now. So you can see we just don't know where the inflation of the construction market's going right now. So we did the best we could here by estimating $300, $320 in March and about 400 right now. And the 400 number is actually coming from a contractor who said a winning bid that he just lost came in at $460 a square foot for new construction, not a school, but just general new construction. So
Well, that's depressing.
we can go back to discussion and questions now.
So
And this, And this don't even include the land that you might need one day.
That is correct. As you know, we did a.
We've got some free land though.
Yeah, I bet.
No, we do. The Pogue Farm belongs to the school system. How many acres? What, you're shaking your head. I mean, we do. We have
22.4 acres.
He
the Pogue Farm.
calculated it earlier today.
Yes, sir.
So can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? So could we go back to the map? I had an interesting conversation a few weeks ago, and so there was some conversation about, someone brought up, it'd just be so cool if we could build into the side of the VA. Correct me if I'm wrong, the light blue is the 500-year. So there is a little bubble of space there, and I know it's not nearly enough, but then there's also a linear area there that's also in the 500-year floodplain. And I had an opportunity to bring this up to our congressman, and he visited with, actually his chief of staff visited with the VA, and there are some opportunities there for discussion. I don't know that it could really materialize, and I gave Chris the information. I'm in agreement that we need to keep all the cards on the table. Let's see what everything, turns out, what kind of situation we could get from exploring all options.
Can I say one thing to that? And I agree, explore every option we can do. But I want us to get it out of Salem. I want us to bring the sheriff's, and this is going out of my boundary. I want the sheriff's office, the courthouse. There's a reason they don't charge us anything for being there. Let's bring that back to Roanoke County. Let's incentivize one of our areas. But that's my only point to the BCAT thing is I want to get it out of Salem. I don't care if it goes to Glenver, Hollins, wherever. But that's my only thing there. Why I realize Salem was a part of Roanoke County at one time, but unless somebody tells me something I don't know, they're not paying us anything. So I'm thinking about Roanoke County.
We just own that property already.
I hate where it's at.
He's centrally located.
I don't like where it's at either, but, I also look at, as we've had numerous discussions with Jill Luke, we're running out of land in Roanoke County, developable land. So, that's the only thing I've shared with you on 101. That's been my only thing that I have thought about because,
Well, we're not making any more.
We're not
We're
making
not.
more. We're,
And
as
what's
a board,
left
as a
is
board
challenging.
and with with Jill and different ones, we're trying to find ways to increase economic development. Of course, we bought the Woodhaven property, whatever, but there's just not that much left out there now.
But if we're talking about this in my mind, kind of gloomish, to me, this is an opportunity for Roanoke County. This ought to be celebrated, and we ought to, it's just like bringing an industry, which, we need to do so. The same thing. This is an opportunity for workforce development, for educational purposes. There's so much to it. This ought to be celebrated, and in the same vein of bringing a nice industry, same thing of bringing the courthouse and the jail and everything back to Roanoke County. Think of what that would do for an area in our county. These are wonderful opportunities to me.
We got land within business park.
Right? It's wherever, but let's incentivize Roanoke County.
But every time the meeting that I'm talk with business folks or had meetings in the past, workforce development. If we only had the workforce, we would move here, or we could really develop more our facility here, our business here. And, unless you get that, and you got to start somewhere, you got to train and train these students that where they will stay here, that they have the job opportunities to stay here. And unfortunately, we keep sort of saying, okay, it's a good idea, but it just keeps on going down. And we're not moving towards, where are we moving? I think we explore everything. I hadn't had the opportunity to tell my board, but I'll tell it today. I guess Congressman Ben Klein asked me to serve on a 6th district education committee, which to me, my point is getting the money, yes. But we've got, our facilities are in sad shape. We look at our overall, what we need to get done. Look at the years on these schools. It's just, they're just crumbling. And we've got to have those funds, whether state, wherever it comes from, we just got to have those monies to make it work. And, Don mentioned we do have a piece of property. What is it worth? Y'all might know more of the value of things like that. Is it something that we have it there? Is there something you can swap for another piece of property or, the values? I don't know. But it's something that maybe the real estate folks know.
Mr. Chairman, let me add, let me take this discussion in a little different direction. And I want to talk about what I've been working on for about a month and a half. And I called you, Jason, about the solar schools, and you passed it along to Don. Don, you met with the gentleman. I know you two guys have had a presentation. Phil and I have had a presentation. Very impressed with what I heard and I saw. But one of the things that really tweaked my ear is that when I took my master's program, got it in 2019, we had a class on green construction. And so the first day, the professor kind of set us up, about, okay, what entity pollutes more in the world? And so we were taking shots of this and that, and none of us got it right. So, he finally said, well, let me clue you in. The biggest polluter of the world is the built environment that we're in right now. You can't shut it off. It runs 24/7. You can take a car and park it, and it's done for the day or done for how many hours that you need to do it. So we really, that class really opened up my eyes about the built environment. And so this solar company really kind of honed in on that built environment. And what I was able to hear, and I don't know where you guys are with this, but to have energy positive schools where they produce your own energy, your own power, and you're off the grid, I think is a concept that will help. Mr. Greenway, you're talking about something with energy and creating excitement. I think that will create a lot of excitement in our area. I know you guys recently had Mr. Motley talk to you about the site over on Cove Road, and I saw that and the results of that. One of the things that this solar architect and development firm, they see a compact school being more efficient, 2 levels versus a winged one on 1 level. So, I appreciate the study that y'all went through, but maybe we need to look at it, the site with a compact building. I'm not sure it'll still work on Cove Road, but I'm glad you brought up Pogues Mill, because actually the orientation of Pogues Mill is facing south. And so it definitely, I think it has potential. It's got a flat part over here. It's got a knoll over here. But, I would like to go down and look at some of those schools. There's one in Myrtle Beach that I've been invited to. It's a CTE. And he showed me the 2014 to 2019 dashboard, the energy dashboard. And from the very first year, they were energy positive on it. Sure. So you're talking about paying $1,000 in a monthly bill versus $25,000 to power a school. I mean, the savings was,
I'm with you 100% on this one,
Right.
as you probably know. But
right.
Oh, here's where we are. And we actually had an architect, the architect that talked to us at our work session, had an idea of what a CTE should look like. And it was the exact opposite of what you just talked about. So the conventional architecture is that you have a lot of open space, a sprawling building, which is quite different from this idea.
Mhm.
This is the way to go. We have done, Chris has done, Jason Sir has done almost all of the programming work for what a Burton Center should do. All right. So they've gone through a lot of the detailed work that you could actually hand to an architect and say, look, here's what we need with respect to programming. These are the programs that we're offering. This is what we think we need in the space. So that document could easily be handed off to this particular company and let them do their own thing and tell us what they're looking for. The reason why I suggested that you all get involved in it is because of the financial aspect of it, because that's a whole other ballgame. When they talked about the credits, they talked about federal credits. We also know, I think the law has been changed recently with respect to buybacks with Appalachian Power. So it is definitely the way to go. No doubt in my mind. But the reason, what needs to be understood, I think, on your side is what the financing is like. That's kind of out of our bailiwick. But with respect to whether or not it would work, based on everything I know, it would be the way to go.
Well, they're not going to present anything unless they feel there's momentum with U5.
Well, and Chris, also, because I had asked you about getting them in to do a presentation to the
Yeah.
whole board. And
We
what
have
was
to be
their
careful.
response, Chris?
You're right.
The response was their attorney advised them not to give a presentation in public.
The reason being is that if they do, based on state procurement, is they may get excluded. So I haven't heard no objections from anybody on this board to that plan, to talk to those folks.
I mean, even we asked the questions when their presentation was given to us last week, I guess.
We just need to make sure that
And they did.
wherever we're doing so it doesn't preclude them from bidding. That's it. But there's no objection on our side that I know.
Well, I guess when I was talking to them, I was talking about, let's do 3 schools at one shot.
Yeah.
Because you can build a power plant and copy it and put it on all 3 structures.
How about a library?
It's set, and maybe even a
Yeah,
library,
exactly.
wher but
That has to be in Holland.
Well, of course. We could put the Hollins Library in Benton. How would you like that, Tim? Now, you'd make him very happy if you did
He
that.
wants your library.
Well, we'll put the sign on it.
I listened to the conversation we participated with, it was an hour and a half, I guess. I took 4 points away from it, if I can remember. One was the tax credits for the locations, which all you needed was the addresses. And I think they figured that out. But the 0% interest concept raised my eyebrow.
Absolutely.
And they've done that before in the past in North and South Carolina. However, and they've worked through a senator from North Carolina, U.S. senator. And the legislation, I think, if I understood correctly, David, was being considered as part of the infrastructure bill. And if it's passed, you would not only have tax credits, but 0% interest, then you got the solar buyback.
Right.
I mean, it just
It's
gets
capped now.
better and better. But the one thing I noticed about it, and I'm not an architect by stretch of imagination, but everything was located with open concepts. I mean, a community area in the middle of the school, and the rooms are on the outside.
Yeah.
And to David's point, they were built not in the wing fashion and the solar energy and so forth. But one whole county rebuilt all their, I think, 2 elementaries, a middle school, and a high school. Now, those counties down there in South Carolina and North Carolina, they don't have probably the revenue that Roanoke County does. So it caught my attention to be something that was worth looking into. And by the way, these square footage concepts, I mean, I had a friend yesterday, he's going to retire from Wells Fargo in Charlotte. He's postponed building a house at the lake because the price doubles. So just $400. Look, we're all reasonable people. nobody wants to build something that's gonna cost that much. So you gotta find something else to get that cost down to somewhere around 200, 2.25 square foot to make it even realistic.
Well, when they do the financial studies, they'll tell us and they'll use the rate of inflation.
Right.
To show us, we need to build it now and not in
Let's
2027
keep
or,
this going. What do you need from us to say, what do you need?
well,
What should we do? Because I think this is an exciting concept.
okay. So we need to show them the Pogues Mill property. Would you be open to that
Sure,
for the Burton Center?
absolutely. Well, folks, there's 4 other members. What do you think?
I mean,
I'll
if it's
be
land we
honest
have,
with
I'm
you,
concerned
because-
that it's a little far out for, someone driving.
Well, there's 2 schools that it's very close to.
Mhm.
2 of the high schools.
I actually did.
No, you're right.
Well, I actually did the math, and I think Chris did too. I looked at the driving distance from each one of the high schools. And when I looked at it from the Burton Center, I looked at it from the site that they're talking about in Hollins, and I looked at it from Pogues Mill, and there was no real slam dunk winner anywhere,
Right.
so let's put it
Can I
this
say
way.
this?
If we can get a Burton Center, we can get it done at a reasonable cost that the Board of Supervisors agreed to, why would we say no?
Yeah, and so to the point, we can have this discussion and it can be $1 million or $100 million, but we need it done. So I'm with Mr. Butzer and probably the rest of the board, that if that meets our needs and meets the needs of the citizens and the county and we.
How long have we owned Pogues Mill since?
It was.
Yes, definitely, it should be.
Okay.
We
Well,
bought
good.
it real cheap too, so.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this sounds like a fantastic area to explore, and thank you, Mr. North, for the microphone. But I would counsel any of you from negotiating or addressing this topic one-on-one with any folks that offer this service. What I'd recommend is we are in a position to receive unsolicited proposals with regards to this type of solar energy construction. If someone approaches you with any information about it, feel free to receive the information and say, I'm going to pass this on to our procurement folks. I'd invite you to get in contact with them as well and to let that happen through our purchasing department.
We backed out real quick.
But absolutely, it looks like an exciting concept to explore.
So aren't we just putting the cart a little bit ahead? We're solving the problem we need to talk about the funding, and I thought that's where we were headed.
Well, and it's a
See,
good
no,
point.
well, if this concept plays out, that really does attack the funding problem big time.
It brings it down to more reasonable price.
We gotta start something. We
And
gotta have
actually
some
make
funding.
money back.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
We gotta prepare for that
And they're-
funding though. so.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, we also, I don't mean, for people in the building industry, I mean, I'm not sure construction costs are gonna go down anytime soon. I mean, quite honestly, I mean, look, if I'm a manufacturer, and I know that I can get $8 for a 2x4, even when everything, slows down a little bit. I mean, costs may come down a little bit, but I mean, I don't know if we're going back to, that's my fear. So my fear is the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to
I don't think we're talking about waiting.
be.
You guys just said you wanted it
Yeah.
2023.
Well, I was referring to,
whatever it takes to go to 2023, let's
Yeah,
go.
2023, if we can start, hey, I'm all about it.
We're with
But I don't think we need to hone in on one site. To Ms. Hooker's point, I mean, we need to consider that as an option over there at the VA. I agree with considering the Pogues Farm site, but then we also have, if the cost of land is only going to be $1 million and the project's 65, that's a very small percentage to pay. We need to find the best location that's
We
going
need
to
to
serve
find
the
Best
entire
location, I
county.
agree with that, but we need to find the best location too, with respect to the solar concept. Location with solar is important, and I don't disagree. Look at 3 options and see which one checks the best boxes for the solar and location, et cetera.
The only caution I would give, and David maybe will give a little more insight, but the solar projects that I have been involved in my world have actually been more expensive than the front end. Your payback is over the long term. So I guess in this concept, is it going to cost us more money to build using using a solar or green energy concept.
They're giving me $300 a square foot. That's less than the
That's on a
400.
That's with a compact building.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm saying, based on what we're looking at, based on what's been shown to us today, it's a more sprawling building. Is it not going to be more expensive
The
than?
tax credits, what are the other things that may come along with that?
But how would the
We don't
tax
know.
credits benefit us?
And I will say,
As a
you know,
government.
and Chris, may be able to speak to this or, when it comes to a CTE center, it's a little bit different than building, if we're comparing it to a high school, for instance, the layout. You do need a lot of ground floor space for the,
Automotive things.
right,
You can't
but,
put
I
on the
mean,
second
there's
floor.
certainly no reason why you can't go vertical with, with your cosmetology, with your criminal justice, with your, there are a lot of
Engineering.
programs that you can build up as long as you have that footprint, for that ground floor access. So.
There needs to be a lot of things done before you get to the estimates. And correct me if I'm wrong,
Like
David,
funding.
but I thought he also mentioned that there are different arrangements and concepts. There's rent to buy, there's lease to buy, whatever you want to call it. There's 20-year deals, there's 30-year. I think one school had 40. So, there are lots of options you got to lay on the
I
table. and see what
believe the three North Carolina schools, they actually leased the company you're talking about built the buildings. They were the developer.
Right.
And they've leased back to the county.
That's
And it
right.
saved them a lot of money.
Yeah,
Capital money.
That's right.
I think they had a 20-year lease.
Yeah, exactly. And then they give the property back to the school.
Correct.
That's right.
It's a good deal.
Yeah.
I see somebody running the
I
ground.
see Peter back there going,
Yeah.
Just
I think
tell us
we
when we need
I
to
think we
shut
need
up,
to change
okay,
subject.
please.
No one talked to me about it. This is
so
just
let's
all
talk
natural.
about
lands.
funding.
Yes.
Well,
Give him a microphone.
Now, Peter, let me ask you, I like to use, my site development experience and the energy efficiency building. What's wrong with me talking to those people about a structure? I'm not talking about financing. I'm not talking about procurement. I'm talking about
Fact finding.
Yeah, fact finding.
And I don't have a problem with them. If they pass on information to you, I would receive the information. I would pass it on to the procurement folks, and then they can help with any follow-up conversations that can happen.
Okay.
Is a site visit okay?
I'm sorry, what
Would a
was it?
site visit be okay with the developer and David and maybe somebody from the school board just to walk the property?
I would caution against board members from meeting one-on-one with the folks as much as
How
possible.
about our director of facilities?
I would say let's involve the procurement department and the director of facilities and yes, arrange a site visit.
You mean I can't go down and see the school?
You personally, you could go down and take a look at it yourself, but the principle that I would recommend avoiding is having negotiations and conversations between members of the board and a potential vendor.
Okay.
Well, if he goes down there and takes the tour, then what you just said means he's walking a fine line.
So as a skilled
No,
attorney
I mean,
as
I'm
you are,
sorry,
is
but-
there any way you can come up with something that he can do that's legal? And still not get in trouble?
I'll go with him and make sure he stays out of trouble.
I understand.
We'll call it a golf trip.
If we take our golf clubs,
Hey,
yeah.
that's-
It's a golf trip.
We're going to Myrtle Beach on a golf trip.
Okay.
And we just have to drive by this place and.
Take Paul with you. He was a lawyer.
The problem is Peter can give us a script, but what he can't guard against is the unsuccessful bidder who files a bid protest, has the whole thing thrown out, and you're delayed for 5 years in court, and then you got 5 years worth of inflation. Peter, or an attorney, can give you a script, but you're still gonna have 2, 3, 4 unsuccessful bidders that are gonna look at anything they can to file a bid protest. And yeah, you may win the bid protest, What's your backlog now, Peter, in circuit court? 18 months? That's the problem. Peter can work out a script. The risk you're trying to avoid is don't open the door to a successful bid protest and challenge.
Yeah, but Paul, let's back up though. How many bidders do we have on the Green Ridge Rec Center?
Well, can I
I think if you want to approach this, there is a way to do a solicited, unsolicited PPEA proposal, where you put out a general statement saying we are interested in preliminary proposals from school developers, so that it's now a competitive process. The way we did it with the Green Ridge Rec Center was through the PPEA process, where a company came to us unsolicited and said, we'd like to pitch for this. Paul was involved in a lot of that PPA regulation as county attorney, and I was, because I was the project manager for that. But it was a fair, competitive, open process. We could have gotten solicitations from 5 companies, but we only got 1. Now, we did for the public safety building, which is also a PPA, we had 3 different proposals. So, but you need to craft your document that opens up the process to everybody before you start visiting places. And then if they come in with a preliminary expression of interest and however you craft that, then I think you're open to look at 5 different places if you get them from 5 different people. That's you do have to keep it open and competitive on the front end, whatever your process is. And it sounds like to me you're kind of talking about something that could easily be a PPEA. Which is Public-Private Educational Facilities and Infrastructure Act project. But the other piece of that is no matter how you do that, you're going to have to find a way to pay for it, because they're not going to, they may lease it back to you, but there's obviously going to be a development cost and a profit for the developer, or they're not going to do it. So you also have to look at, and I think I'm leading into Peter's presentation, potential ways to pay for it. And, quite frankly, from where I'm sitting, looking at what we can do with our property taxes and what other options are, even if we went to 2020 with these inflating numbers, I don't think we're going to get there with property taxes. So with that, I turn it back over to the attorney.
Yeah, Peter, if you go through your, I guess it's item D.
You may need the clicker.
I'd be happy to. Chris, do you have that? Do you still have one?
Kristen, I'm glad you read this thing.
Return your microphone. It looks like I.
So
who's going on this?
we'll talk about that later.
Went to Myrtle Beach on a golf trip. I just happened to stop.
And while we're getting up the slides, Mr. Peters had asked that I
turn on the mic.
think it's on now.
There you go.
We go. All right. But Mr. Peters had asked that I review just one of the potential funding mechanisms. It's a little uncertain right now, and we'll highlight that as we go through. But certain localities, as you may know, have been granted authority from the General Assembly to impose a general retail local sales tax for school renovation projects.
Difficult technicalities.
This works in the school building, so. I'm sorry.
Most days.
It was going so well.
See why they don't want me to talk?
Yes.
Technology works better all the time.
We get up on the chalkboard.
And if we're having glitches, I know that everybody has a printout. I'm happy to just work from the printout.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's
that'd be
That's good
great.
for me. Yeah, fine, go for it.
Let's go ahead and do that. But let's to understand where we are at present and what we can look forward to in the future. Let's kind of walk back in time to understand how this happened and see where we are at present. So let's start with in 2019 in Halifax County. Halifax County had found one of their legislators to sponsor a bill that their behalf. And it was passed. In this bill, it became a new section of the Code of Virginia. It was 58.1, 605.1. And it authorized Halifax County to impose a general retail sales tax at a rate not to exceed 1% to provide revenue solely through capital projects for the construction or renovation of schools. And there's a four-step process, and while we're here, I'd like to pause, talk through that process. The last slide of the presentation includes these four steps, but just to highlight them all briefly right now. The first step was that the local governing body, which was Halifax, needed to pass a resolution that initiated the referendum and then also set an expiration date. And there's two different types of expiration dates that can come into play. The first is if it's going to be funded, and I know a lot of the focus is on how is this going to be funded. If it's going to be funded by bonds or by loans, then the expiration date would be when those bonds or loans are repaid. The second is simply if there is no bond or loan to finance the project, and it's going to be funded just through these tax revenues, then it cannot last for more than 20 years from the date that this resolution is passed by the governing body. So that's even before anything else takes place. It's initiated by a referendum, and they state when it expires. The next step is the clerk of the circuit court will publish for 3 consecutive weeks before the election that there's going to be a referendum on this specific issue, and it sets forth in the code the language that it needs to be used. This is for school capital projects, and it expires on this date. After the publication, the referendum is held. And again, there's language in the code about what the question on the referendum needs to be. Again, it needs to state that the revenues from the sales tax shall be used solely for the capital projects, for the construction and renovation of schools, and again, states the expiration date. The fourth step is following the referendum, if it's supported by a majority of citizens, the matter goes back to the local governing body. The local governing body then can choose whether to impose the tax. If they do choose to do so, they must do so by an ordinance. After they enact the ordinance, it can then become effective no sooner than 120 days or 4 months after the ordinance is enacted. So it's a process, again, those 4 steps. And if there's any questions at any time, feel free to jump in and interrupt me.
Is the 20-year expiration the expiration of the bond or the expiration of the tax itself?
The expiration of the tax itself. So
there is a sunset on it, it just happens to be 20 years.
Yes, so if there is a bond or a loan that can exceed 20 years. Right. That there are some examples that have longer than 20-year bonds that have passed through referenda.
Right. Okay.
Yes, very good question.
Can it be fewer than 20 years? Can it be 15
Yes,
years?
it can be sooner than 20 years. Absolutely. Yes.
Peter, if I might interject, today in the state of Virginia, our tax around here is 5.3%. Everybody thinks, oh man, that's a lot and everything, but we only get 1%. State of Virginia gets 4.3. So.
Do we know based on what sales are typically, what kind of revenue can you generate with a 1% tax?
Yeah.
12 million.
12 million annually?
12.2 to be exact. Isn't that right, Rebecca? Where's Rebecca?
Yes. But today we receive 1% of the 5.3%.
Right.
So that's the sales tax in the budget.
But if we're using this for a specific project, doesn't the tax increase need to match what our final outcome? Like if we're looking for $70 million, I mean, or,
So
you know.
let me back up. Peter, let me ask the question. If I understood what you just said to us, we almost have to have a project ready and know what it's going to be before we can even do any of this.
That's correct.
You have to have your costs.
The cost upfront.
We're
It's the
going to
decision.
have to have a cost, have ability, a blueprint.
The decision made, if it's going to be financed through loans or bonds, that needs to be made up front when the resolution is passed.
But
Yes, sir. Were there any other questions this time? And Madam Clerk, it looks like we're up and running, is that correct?
Well.
We're up.
Give it a try. Uh-oh, he's trying.
Okay, I've turned it on and off. All right, we'll continue without slides, that's great.
Did someone else run the slides for you?
Let's move forward to the year 2020. It was an eventful year in this area. Try again.
Uh-huh. No.
You gotta get out of it. Still not working. But in the year 2020, the authority was expanded to 8 additional localities. The Code of Virginia, it changed the structure a little bit, and instead of in the 58.1605.1, instead of simply referring to Halifax, it was amended to refer to a qualifying locality may implement this tax. And the definition section that preceded it, which was 58.1602, included the definition of a qualifying locality, and then added, it stated Halifax, and then included these 8 additional localities. And we'll look at the chart perhaps in our handouts as to the other 8 localities. So turn with me, if you will, in your handouts to slide 3. This sets forth the other localities: Charlotte, Gloucester, Halifax, Henry, Mecklenburg, Northampton, Patrick, Pennsylvania, and the city of Danville. And the chart that you see shows those that had acted, that had held the referenda, those that did, by enacted resolution, held the referenda. All of them decided to impose the tax, all of them passed. 3 of the localities, Mecklenburg, Pennsylvania, and the city of Danville, have not yet acted, but Pennsylvania County has approved the referenda, so that will happen. As I understand, the city of Danville has publicly stated, at least for the time being, that
So anywhere in the state of Virginia that these have been offered in a referendum, they passed?
That's right.
That's a good track
And
record.
sometimes it's been by a slim margin, but yes, they've all passed.
The margins have been 52, 48, 54, 46, 55, 45, and there was even some that were greater than that.
I would suspect there's some good PR work that's done before a referendum.
Probably so.
Yes. And that's a good point. And there have been, and I discussed with Mr. North's strategy about this. He had some great insight as to whether it would be better to state specific projects in addition to the general language that's required in the code. And there is a locality that did more specifically state what the projects were. And that's something that, as this unfolds, that might be something worth considering.
Yeah, just to add, Peter, only one municipality specifically named their complexes. The Northampton Middle High School complex was named in the Northampton referendum.
And
But
what
you're right,
percentage was
people
that?
have to know.
Sure.
Because if you go back and look at the history of the Blue Ribbon Committee, that failed 70 to 30% back whenever that was in the 1990s. And then out of that came the Blue Ribbon Committee being established. But anyway,
Yeah, you have to.
yeah.
Phil, do you have the percentage that passed? When
What's
they
that?
named, do you have, in Northampton, do you have that specific percentage that
52.
passed when they named a specific project?
Yeah, let's see. No, I just had those 3 from Charlotte, Henry, and Patrick County. I do not, but I've seen it, David, and it was a good percent. I just don't have it.
I will apologize, I do not have any of them in front of me.
Just curious, I mean, taxpayers might prefer to know exactly what it's going for rather than.
What's that?
What's that?
I would think the taxpayers would like to know exactly what it is going for rather than just a general school
Well, yeah,
funding.
right. See, one of the things that I noted in reading the Blue Ribbon Committee report was, I think it involved a number of things that were supposed to happen around the county, and it didn't pass because some parts of the county, some magisterial districts didn't want it to pass because there was nothing for them in it. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you gotta be careful about what you ask for because you might not get it. Now, the benefit of BCAT is that impacts the whole county and all 5 magisterial districts. When you hang on anything else, some people may not be so kind in other magisterial districts if the proposed school is not in their backyard.
I hope you're correct, Phil. I guess my fear is we could, and I looked at we could relive the failed referendum in 95 if we use existing property, Coves Mill, because the other 4 regions of the county may look at, oh, you're putting BCAT in Southwest County, and unfortunately, we'd have a rerun of what happened with the failed referendum. Mr. Butzer's correct. It's going to take a very robust public relations campaign. But I can still see, unfortunately, a similar mindset surfacing. Now, maybe after 25 years, the citizens have changed, but I think it would be, I'd love for it to be a Pogues mill. But as you point out, you have 2 high schools that feed right into it.
But you're gonna have all 5 high schools participating, so that's the PR part.
Well, let's,
But I think David's point is that it could help when you go to the citizens, when you specify the projects.
we'll get into the
Also,
details.
if I can say on that, when we talk about, to Mr. North's point, with BCAT, we have a fairly even breakdown. This is as of February 10th, 2020, this is the makeup of BCAT, 21.5% from Cave Spring, 11.2 from Glenver. That's our, that's our smallest. That could be due to due to the size of the school as well. 23.4 from Hidden Valley, 20.1 from Northside, and 23.8 from Bird.
Right.
That's a pretty good
Right.
even
It sure is.
distribution. So, I mean, everybody.
We have to put it somewhere. It's gotta go in one district, right?
Somewhere in the
So-
county.
And, it's in Salem now, and that's not in anybody's district.
Yeah, that district needs to go away.
And that's a pretty good one. And they're gonna move that division. And so the,
Thanks.
you're turning people away. David and I had this conversation and some others in the past. Why are they turning people away? And yes, Don, we do read those books you send us.
Thank you.
And why are they turning people away, for crying out loud? It doesn't, go get some rental space if you need to for a year and put some classes. That's a selling feature of doing something. The benefit, the economic development impact is a selling feature of doing something. So you have to have your script, and all 10 of us got to be singing from the same hymn book.
Well,
Peter, get us to 2021.
Yeah, I'll say, let's hold off. Let's let Peter finish what we've asked him to do.
All right, so in 2021, Senate Bill 1170 was proposed in behalf of the Isle of Wight, that they could be included in this definition of the qualifying locality. And unfortunately, this bill died. So after crossover, after it went to the House, it was assigned to the House Subcommittee on Finance, and they decided to lay it on the table. And what that means is that it failed. They wanted to study it further before taking action. And so our next slide.
Can I ask a question? Why did that one fail and all of the others pass?
And that's a good question. And that's what we have some insight into that. Mr. North, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I followed this closely. It passed the Senate, and it was bipartisan support. In fact, the proponent was the state senator, the Senate Minority Leader, Tommy Norman, was the sponsor because that was his county. So I figured when it passed the Senate, it's definitely going to pass the House. Last thing I thought was it would not pass the House. So it gets into committee and they just pigeonholed it. And part of the reason was because the chair of that committee knew that this modernization committee was also going to be organized. And so they want to see what comes out of that report, whether it affirms this, because the VACO, the VACO education lobbyist, Jeffrey Bennett, and I talked. He had lined up for this bill to be an omnibus bill to cover the whole state of Virginia in early January, late December. And he had 2 delegates, bipartisan support, to sponsor the bill. Well, they came along and said, you can't sponsor but 7 bills per delegate. And so they had already had other commitments to sponsor bills. And so they backed down at the last minute, and there wasn't any bill other than Isle of Wight. There was hopes that there'd be a bill to cover all the state of Virginia, much like there has been in some other areas like cigarettes. And so then it's up to the locality, because right now it's like they got to ask the General Assembly, may I do this, and get a sponsor, and it goes through this 1.5-year process. That failed. And so they're hoping, Jeffrey's hoping that, and this committee we're going through the process now, will come out with a report saying, do an omnibus bill to cover the whole state, General Assembly pass it, and then people don't have to go ask, because it's a tried and true process to do that. And I think that's part of the reason it failed, was because they wanted that bill and they wanted to see what this committee said.
And what Mr. North has shared is correct, and it is what we have outlined in the slide. And it appears that the House Finance Committee wanted to take a more global look at how to solve these problems. And if, yes, we are crossing our fingers that there will be some statewide solutions and not leave the brunt of the expense and the solution to be borne by the localities, that would be a wonderful solution. So at this point in time, there is uncertainty on our stakes, whether, uncertainty in several areas. So if we moving forward, this is a next steps timeline. The first step in purple, we want to move this forward proactively ourselves as part of our legislative agenda. There is some uncertainty in that regard. We know that not all of our local legislators voted in favor of this, so we would want to have some sit downs and some one-on-one discrete conversations with them about what concerns, if any, they had and why they voted against the Isle of Wight bill. That would be the first step. If we can, our goal would be to get unanimous support from our local legislators. Often if a bill is introduced that favors or benefits one particular locality, other legislators will look to see, is there uniformity, is there consensus among the legislators that represent that locality? So if not,
Bingo.
Mr. Lubeck, so at that point, then I ask our fellow board members, I'm assuming, and I don't know this, but I've heard this, that our local legislators were not on board with this. Have any of y'all had discussions with our local folks, and will they
Two that
support
come to
this?
mind that have not. We're not on board. When we went to Lobby Day 2 years ago and met with Senator Sulan, Dan Webb, and Mr. Delegate McNamara's legislative assistant, and we pitched the idea, and they basically said no, that their bosses wouldn't support that. And I asked why. And Mr. Webb said that he didn't trust that you guys could spend the money wisely. So that was it for that.
yes, I think that you're correct that we would need to have those conversations.
Well, so I asked the question again to my colleagues, have y'all had those discussions? You know, we're putting a lot of trust in that we can get this done. Have you had those discussions?
Let me answer that question this way, if I might. Yeah, there's been discussions, and I've had a couple myself. But there was one delegate that expressed an interest. And that was last year, as late as December. And the gentleman, I won't mention his name, said, I suppose that, it's something that's going to happen statewide one day. Said, let me think about it. But then I think that he aligned with somebody else. Now, what do we think is going to happen this year? I think there's going to be an omnibus bill that's put out, and that bill is going to be put out in the state general assembly. Whether it's a state delegate and a senator, or maybe it's just a senator or just a state delegate, I don't know. But if that bill is filed by whomever to apply in the whole state of Virginia, then you don't necessarily need a sponsorship by someone in your local delegation.
But by us talking about this, we all agree, right? We're all in agreement that we want to push forward with this.
So
idea.
let me back up and answer your question a different way. You and I have talked about it, but this is for everybody else. My feeling on the matter is simply this, and I've said this to a number of my colleagues, is that all 10 of us need to be singing from the same sheet of music.
That's right.
Okay, so there's step one. The second step, and I have great respect for Mike Altizer. He came before both boards. But the second thing we've got to do, and I think most important, is we need to get citizen buy-in. And I'm very much an advocate of the citizen committee because they're going to be the one to help shape that message to our communities. And I think that that's going to help shape the message to our delegates.
Our PR campaign.
Exactly. So I think that, we can ask the question 100 different ways, but always stop and go, what can I do? How can I make this happen? How can I put my best foot forward? And I guess that's the first thing that you and I have talked about. Is the first thing the 10 of us in this room need to make a decision. Are we on board or not? If there's one deflection, this conversation is dead.
What's the question? What on board with what?
moving forward with what Peter's proposing.
Yeah,
So,
I can't.
Yes, they are.
I mean, that's
I
the,
know our side. I
that's
get
the,
that.
that's the first
But we need
piece.
to know because of
That's already,
Mr.
that
Lubeck, I
message.
didn't mean to hijack the
That
presentation.
message has already been answered. It was covered in the Roanoke Times in February. I think Luke did a great job with that. So that answer's already been made for
So the
us.
simple answer is yes, you do.
Yes, yes.
Everybody here,
Yes.
everybody here agrees with that 1%. And we're gonna have that.
Not the 1%. We agreed to look at the sales tax as the way to fund this. If this is, okay, so again, there's step one. But step two is, I personally have a lot of questions. We're talking about taking a building from 89,000 square feet to 176,000 square feet. My first question, going back to what Mr. Ray mentioned a moment ago, is are we meeting the demands of our economy? If an employer wants to come here, are we producing in Roanoke County through our technical training, career and technical training, are we producing what our businesses are looking for?
Are you asking currently or when we?
I'm asking at any point in time, I'm asking whether it's today or even what we're looking at in the future, are we spending time on things that may or may not help evolve the economy of Roanoke County and the region? I mean, Mike brought up, are we doing what we can do to keep students here after school? I can't answer that question, Tim. I don't know the answer, but I'm saying that's something that we collectively should be working on. That should be something the Citizens Committee should be looking at. That's what the Economic Development Impact Statement should look at. We need to know where we need to be focusing this BCAT center.
But Mr. Peters, we're asking a question rhetorically, I think, because we know what is going to keep those kids here, right? I'm kind of getting drawn into bringing this out. What's going to keep those kids here are those jobs, right? So that's not a question you can ask us. We need to get those kids ready and ready to go forth to work for these companies. So you're going to bring us the jobs.
My question is and really this was glaring in our face when Eldor came to Botetourt County. When they came here and said, oh, there's nobody can do this. And they're looking in North Carolina. I don't know what companies are looking for today. I don't know what the next boom is going to be in businesses. But we should be doing that both collectively on our side and your side.
Do you think Botetourt had better workforce development than we did?
No, that's the whole problem. Nobody in this area, no one was prepared.
That's not a question for the school board because we can't. That's a board of supervisors. Right,
but you're training.
They're in the company, and
yeah, because they've got the same workforce we've got.
Right, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying yeah, you're right. I'm saying when we bring that company in, is BCAT going to be putting out what we need to make this attractive for that company to come in here? I'm not saying you're going to be the one luring the business in here, but I'm saying, and I bring up
that's what we need.
When they came to town, we did not have the workforce in this valley for that. And that's not, I mean, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I guess when I'm looking at a career and technical center, that I take that forward look and go, when we do this, and I'm supportive of doing this. I mean, I've Jason kind of stole it from me earlier, but that was one of the first questions I was going to lead out with is there anybody in this room that disagrees that we need to do something perfect?
Have you read the BCAT moving forward document?
I have.
You have?
Yes.
You didn't see future programming in that document?
I mean,
yes, I did, but
Okay.
but that document can change weekly. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Our economy's changing. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
I don't think anyone would object that having more input from businesses is wrong.
Oh,
So that's a good
that's
thing.
right.
But I think you're going to find that we've got a pretty good head start on that.
And I'm not disagreeing. I'm not saying
Adding more
anybody's.
is-
And
it's a
I'm not
good
saying
idea.
anybody's done anything right or wrong. I'm just saying when we do this, we're making probably the largest investment in Roanoke County schools that we have ever made. And this building needs to be right because I hate to tell everybody in this room, but 50 years from now, when they go look at that school, we're all going to be in the ground or in an urn or something. Okay, so we're not going to be here. So I'm just saying that when we do this, let's make sure we're doing it right.
You have
Medical
a
technology is advancing. We could still,
got-
hey.
More power to
I
you,
might
brother.
still be here.
More power to you,
Jersey.
brother.
I'll speak for yourself.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
I mean, we know Paul's family lives to be 140, so he might still be here, but
I'll still only be 90 or something.
He's gonna, Paul plans on,
I'll be 94,
If I
Lord
could-
willing, but
Paul
hey.
plans on taking Peter's
If I
place when he
could
retires.
expand, I would encourage, as Mr. Butzer said, because I mean, I'm looking at it right now. I would encourage everybody to just revisit that BCAT moving forward, because part of that plan is our staff went through and, you know, you'd
Right.
question the difference between going from 90,000 to 160. You know, each department said, this is what we need to train our people, but there's also incorporated flexible spacing, which can be used to implement. They've identified some, you know, HVAC, for instance, industrial electricity, heavy equipment, diesel technician. I mean, you know, that we can use.
And
some of
maybe
these
I'm
flexible
overshooting the
spaces.
runway, but I'm thinking autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
Is that something we can start in our schools?
Cybersecurity, there's a
Someone who
whole
can,
lot.
you know, that's what I'm saying. I'm
Right.
looking at this
I'm
really
glad you-
futuristic when I'm talking about this, is making sure we
But it's
develop.
going to change every 5 to 10 years, Brian.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's why the flexible space is important.
Advisory committee. We do have businesses on that committee to
But
guide us.
but I
It's a
think the
good
suggestion
group,
is
but I
that we
don't know that
expand that
that's their
committee, right?
purpose.
Right,
Yeah.
that's
So,
right.
yes.
And so, you know,
It's a no-brainer.
I was on the phone with Senator Kane's office last Friday afternoon. Peter and I talked to Gwen Mason. She and I, we touched base on another subject, then we shifted over to CTE because Kane's on the CTE subcommittee or lobbying committee, some committee he's on. And I said, oh, by the way, you know, what kind of help you got in the forecast for CTE schools? I always ask that question. She said, well, everything's up in the air now. He's getting ready to do the Senate earmarks. And on the website, you can put in there your suggestions. And then he's going to see what they are and formulate it with whatever the Senate earmarks. They just came out, the guidelines, some of them today, and I handed it to Dan because I think it helps broadband. And she suggested two things. One, go take a look at the Stanton High School, a new high school. But she also, I said, well, what about, what's in the CT area up in the valley? And she pointed out Massanutten Technical Center, MTC. And this was a regional school built in the 70s. And it was a effort on behalf of Rockingham County and the city of Harrisonburg. So I got on the phone, called him, talked to him today briefly, and I'm supposed to call the guy back tomorrow. It excited me when I went on the website after talking to Gwen Friday. These two guys, you can call one of them the Jason Sir of Rockingham County or whatever, and another fellow that are both in charge of the school, put a video on sharing with the public the 21 programs they offer. You got to go on and look at mtc.com or .org, I forget which, Massanutten Technical Center. It sold me, and I wanted to go up there as soon as I could and take a tour of it. Now, I don't know whether it's, you know, wings design or what, but you got to look at that, if nothing else, just for the energy that they put into selling their program. And I also understand from Gwen that the foundation for that was the business community up in the Shenandoah Valley needed these programs. So that's why you've got to energize your business community. I
You
think.
should charge the GAC with
Anyway.
that.
Go look at that. That's a good point. That's a really
Well,
Mr. Mahoney?
and
Online.
it's
Excuse
constantly changing. We know
Excuse me,
that.
Mr. Mahoney.
I guess maybe I'm echoing or channeling Tim Greenway. If this is option A, let's assume it doesn't work. Let's assume we don't get a patron, or let's assume there's not a statewide bill.
Right.
What's option B?
That's what we need to know.
That's right.
I mean, this is great. If we get 12 mil a year, I think we can build BCAT and 2 new elementary schools, if I do my math correctly.
Well, it depends on what
Close.
class you use.
Close. But I'm saying,
We're a heck of a lot closer. That's
Yeah.
exactly.
but if this doesn't fly, and I'm optimistic it would, because it sounds to me that both the Rs and the Ds are running for election or reelection this summer, this fall. They both say nice things, but again, being the pessimist, if this don't fly, do we have an option B?
Well,
And I don't know of any, quite honestly.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
we-
and that's why we come to you. I mean, you guys
Well,
handle the purse strings. So, I mean,
Purses aren't that big.
yeah, I mean,
we need the revenue stream.
Uh-huh.
We need the revenue stream. That's why I'm hoping, never mind the local patrons, I'm hoping that the bill is an omnibus bill that's recommended by this committee. That's why I'm listening to this committee as they move along, because you'll be able to pick up hints as you get into third and fourth meetings, because they got a white paper they got to write about September. And that's why I'm also encouraging you folks to listen in the committee, because there's nothing better than hearing it firsthand and make your own conclusions and share it with the rest of your board members, or if staff does it, share it with the board. Because I firmly believe that this is committee's challenge is twofold. One, to drive the omnibus bill statewide, like they did on other taxes. And to do so, this committee would recommend it. And I also think the committee may be looking at some other funding mechanism that I don't yet can speak about because I haven't heard it. That's why I'm excited they're finally meeting after 8 years, and it took legislation to form this commission. So they have to perform their job and make the recommendation. Stanley's on there. The two people that are the chair, the Senator McClellan, who's running for the Democratic governor, and Chris Hurst is vice chair. But they have there's 8 people on the committee, or 7, and it's 4 and 3. So, I mean, both parties are represented. I think something's going to come out of it. And I'm hoping that it's going to be this, and we don't have to worry about a plan B. That's my hope.
Well, but at the end of the day, we still have to have a plan in place because we still have to sell it to our citizens.
But that's right.
So, I mean, I go back to, and I think there was support of most of your board, and maybe all of it. I mean, I truly think that we need to put together a citizens committee. You know, our board was on board with that. But I think that we need to have that non-biased voice out there that researches this and helps us draw the same conclusion, because we're going to need that. We don't want what happened in 95, 98, whatever it was. We need to build that PR. And so, I mean, I would like to see that move
Just out
forward.
of curiosity, what would this, I know Mr. O'Donnell mentioned the sales or the real estate tax increase couldn't support that. What would the real estate tax increase be to get $12 million, an additional $12 million a year?
Well, I can.
Just out of curiosity.
Well, the problem is when we originally looked at this, it was looking for $91 million was in the letter that I received from Chairman Butzer at the time. Put us around 6%, 6 cents. Right now, I mean, numbers that I believe are more true than that. I think we're looking at $130 million.
at all 3 schools.
I do. So, I mean, you're looking at probably 10 cents.
So a 1 cent sales tax increase is a whole lot more palatable than a 10-cent real estate.
Well, and
tax
that's the point. But I think that we need to build the PR, to have that conversation, and we need to look at, the sales tax is something that it's not on the backs of Roanoke County citizens. That's what a lot of people come through here, stop off I-81, whatever. And, if you look at just a half a cent, we generate $6 million a year. So that's what I'm saying. We've got options out there, but we've got a lot of homework to do. I wanted this meeting for everybody to come together and have a storming session, but to kind of lay our cards on the table of what we've been looking at. I'm looking for, and as I shared with Jason, I really appreciate him meeting with me last Thursday. Also realistic numbers. I mean, Williamsburg will be the 3rd high school that I've been through, and all of them have been 6 to 10 million over budget. And that wasn't during a construction shortage. So to sit here and think that I can think Williamsburg will be done for less than 30, I don't see that happening. I hope and pray I'm wrong. But, I think that we need to make sure we have realistic figures, because going to our citizens with 50 million and end up being 65, we're going to have egg on our face. So we need to make sure we're doing our homework. We know exactly what we're looking for in our facility. We need to buy in from the citizens, hopefully a citizens committee. And we need to move forward from that.
Well, and Mr. Peters, I will say, you're right. I know Glenville went over budget, Cave Spring went over budget, which is why, went over our original budget, right?
Yeah.
Which is why
we carved about 17 million out of that project.
Which is why, with the, lead of Mr. Butzer, we went to a design build. And, I'm fairly confident that, if it wasn't for these, 300, 400% rise in material costs over the last 12 months, we'd be, very darn close to to our,
It may be.
to our budget.
Probably the most efficient project.
I would
is gonna be
agree.
this.
I would agree completely. But
But
I
the-
mean,
the citizens, the real estate property owners and homeowners don't want a 6.7 cent tax increase on $1.03. It'll put us up with Fairfax County, Loudoun County, and those people. We're already the fourth highest county in the state of Virginia on real estate property tax.
So I can,
But
I can also promise you this,
Don't need to go up.
that anything to do with real estate taxes will fail if it goes to a referendum. I mean, the pressure that we had this year to reduce
Right.
real estate taxes because of how much assessments went up,
Evaluation.
then you turn around, you try to push 6 cents, it's not gonna happen. So that's why, as I met, talked with Don, I've talked with you, Jason, and Tim. Sorry I left the other two out, but, on different occasions, that's why we have spent time, not stall tactics, but we have truly spent time looking at other options, whether it be the sales tax, Mr. North is knee deep in all these other, options with the state. I think that we need to make sure we are exercising every option we have, because at the end of the day, we're going to be coming to our citizens asking for their help. So we need to make sure we've done our job first.
Exactly, because the larger question at the end of the day is how you're gonna sell this. All 10 of us on board, and we sell it as best we can, and then it's up to the voters. And if the voters turn it down, that's the larger question. Now what is option B?
So let's circle all the way back to my original question. We have to sell it to our local legislators too, right? We need them on board.
if the omnibus bill,
Yeah, but omnibus bill.
But Tim, that's what I'm saying. That's why
That's
that's
gonna
why
be-
I was very thankful to hear another option when Mr. Altizer spoke to both boards, because getting that citizens engagement is going to help us, I think, along that avenue as
I
well.
couldn't agree more,
You
but
know,
we need to have that input.
Unless
Because those-
before I can finish.
I'm sorry. No, those. You're okay.
Another meeting.
I
like
thought
that.
something was good.
Technical difficulties.
But we need those
I apologize.
three to make sure we can get this done, right? So, let's not say it in here that we're for it and go, we gotta go there and sell it to them too. And they gotta know that we're for it.
I'm here to request of both boards that you're in agreement we create a citizens committee.
And that we start in 2023 to build.
Sure, we can make it happen.
Okay.
I mean, look, if we're gonna go the route of the citizen committee, we gotta, we gotta get off the pot, because, I mean, time is of the essence. I mean,
Well,
that's
you-
something that,
It has
it's gotta be moving forward.
I'm gonna start working tonight. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna wait for a
We're
committee.
going to South Carolina as soon as this meeting's over.
Yeah, so,
Whoops,
I mean,
I hope
in
Mr.
my mind, if
Lubeck's
we're
going.
going that route,
So
we need to
let's-
have this
let me-
committee formed within the next 6
But truly, but
weeks.
wait a minute, let's talk about that for a moment. So given the timeline that Mr. Lubeck has given us,
We didn't get him past the purples, by the way.
so not only,
What's that?
We didn't get him past purple.
I know he,
That's fine. I think that's fine. It's self-explanatory.
My apologies.
We stole Peter's thunder, sorry.
Chris is doing great. They're beating up on Peter now. It's fine. But let's truly look at what he gave us. Yeah, yes, we need to get off our duff and get a citizens committee, but also the other part of it is we're going to have something, a proposal by, make sure we got a proposal by November 22, because that's what's going to go to the citizens.
November 22.
November 22 is when the referendum, so we've got to have a project
Yeah.
with a hard cost
Well,
to go to the citizens by November of 22,
you're gonna form a citizen, when do you want to form it? This year, next year?
right now.
All right, well, then it will follow and be parallel with what's going on in that committee, and it will lead.
And I would say that this body would meet again in 2 months.
I'm good
I
with
agree
it.
with that.
Man, that'd be awesome. And I thank you for getting us together.
Either we're going to do it or we're not. I mean, I've shared with the board,
And we need to, you mentioned 20, I mean, the citizen committee, I mean, if we're really, if this omnibus, bill does not go through, I mean, the citizen committee, as discussed, we'll really need that in place and some results to help lobby our local legislators, which is, I mean, honestly, that's this fall.
And like I said, this.
exactly, that's why I said we need everybody to be on the same legislative agenda.
they come out with this report, they have to by December 1st, I think.
Before you have a citizens committee, you're gonna need a mission and a scope of what they're supposed to be doing, right?
We can create that pretty quickly.
You have to, otherwise what's it gonna do?
Exactly. They need to know what they're supposed to do.
I mean, I
So what
don't
is
think
it?
that'll be
What's
difficult.
the mission?
I don't think that'll be difficult to create, but I mean, we just need to decide what's going to make up the committee. And then we need to, again, I think our staffs are well versed enough to come up with a mission and agenda and go from there.
Well,
None of my staff threw anything in the back of my head, so I guess I'm all right.
What about the Jasons, the chairman Jasons get together to establish that?
That's fine. We work pretty well together.
Mr. Chairman, in the Citizens Committee, do you want to have some businesses involved?
Well, I would say that each district should be able to pick one from each side.
that's
And
what,
and then I would say that it'll be up to you as a Hollins rep and up to you as the Hollins rep to decide whether you want to select business people or Windsor Hill, whatever.
and you'd have a committee of 10 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I know that,
12.
Yeah, I mean, I think once we get above,
Well, I think the
50, yeah.
representation, if you're representing each district, then that gives the.
I mean,
transparency
if
that
I had it
one
my
district.
way, and this is just food for thought, but I would probably not have a member of either board on it. I would have it directed by someone of our staff. Because again, I think we're trying to take the politics out of this, the bias out of it, and have it led by someone of our, each staff respectively. So it'd be 10 citizens and then a staff member from both the county and one from the school board.
Maybe I just need to understand something.
Okay.
What is it that the citizens will do?
They're going to
What are we
evaluate.
asking them to do?
I'm looking for, I would like to hear their input on the need, what's needed to burden, the sites. I mean, I want them to evaluate the whole process.
I'm just gonna throw this
Yeah.
out there. One of the things that we found that really inflated the cost of school construction was getting the community input. Because when you ask for it, they all want things that really you don't need.
But I think that's a little different in
Well,
our
you gotta
house.
define, all I'm saying is we
Yeah.
just really need to define what it is we want them to do.
And I agree. I mean, I think it's a little different when we're going and talking about, what would you love to see at Williamsburg High School? Yeah, you're going to get the wish list. But I think when you have a focused building such as Burton, you can lay the parameters out of what we're looking for, especially if you're trying to push a career and technical center.
Well, I just hope that there's, at the end of the day, the output of the Burton Center is supposed to be highly trained, skilled workers. So you need a lot more than citizen input. You need businesses. Yeah, you've got to have your HVAC, electrical, mechanical.
And I think that all 10 of us in
I
this
think
room
there
are
should
well
be-
versed with people.
Yeah, that's where, I think that's where the real meat comes from, as to what the Burton Center should be delivering, as to what the needs of the business community are.
Well,
I think that's more important than, but I understand you want citizen buy-in, so
Yeah.
you want them part of the process too.
If their citizens can be the business owners.
And they could be hearing from the business owners
Right.
and listening to them.
I mean, I would like to see the Citizens Committee have public hearings. Or not public hearings, but community meetings or whatever. I mean, I think it'd be good to hear the needs of our other citizens at some point here. And it's like I said, I mean, we've got several months. I mean, we're in May. We don't start our legislative agenda until September, October.
No, we start in July, late July.
Well, but
We usually start meeting with the legislators end of the summer.
Right.
Mid- end of the summer.
So we should have some information about it.
To that end, though, our staff, Jason, sir, and our staff, they have put together a very detailed plan of what we believe we need. And I think they know better than anybody.
There's no question, but you need to put some frosting on this cake, and you need to get some citizens, and you need to get maybe some business people. Not saying they don't have a plan. You're right, they probably got the plan, but you need it to be reaffirmed by the citizens and understood, and as well as the businesses,
I have a
because
suggestion.
you have strength in numbers.
I have a
Yes, sir.
suggestion. We have a really great CTE General Advisory Board that already meets routinely. Can we use them and invite business and charge them with this task?
It's a thought. We got something already in place.
It's already in
More
place.
intimately involved right now.
Yes, yeah.
So what do you think about this? Because we could sit and talk about this forever. I mean, I like that idea. I mean, it's already, but
we're part of that committee.
we can step aside, but, Mr. Peters?
Yes, sir.
You and I, between now and the end of next week, let's iron out the ins and outs of this committee. And with hopes of having a game plan. I mean, we need a game plan in place by the next week. Cause I mean, in the summer, we'll be here before we know it. I mean,
Summer's canceled. Everyone's working.
Let me know.
Yeah.
So let me know. We'll make it
Does
work.
that sound good?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I got a question, guys. Just a second. We're talking about 3 schools. We're replacing 2 elementary schools. We don't need a committee to tell us to replace 2 elementary schools.
No, this is
Right.
focused on Burton only.
Okay, but we're talking about building 3 of them, right? At one time, 91 million, right? Okay, I'm just trying to get the,
Well, but I think the discussion that we're having is the construction of the elementary schools, and correct me if I'm wrong, is pretty much we're gonna try to work that through the CIP. The Burton Center is gonna be what we're looking at, the legislative fix. Because that's gonna be a very large ticket item.
Listen, I think there's a parallel track though, which is all of that stuff should happen, but we should also explore the solar deal here with a package of 3 buildings.
But that's
right.
We could still do that work.
Right.
Yeah.
And compare what the numbers are.
well, they told me over the phone that I've had several phone calls with them. They can package the financing, the leasing, so we don't have to do a sales tax or a referendum. So we haven't heard the bottom of that yet.
You may have to recuse
That'd be a good
yourself.
discussion for the golf course.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly,
I've
they
learned
said.
that word
Okay.
over the last month.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
The company
He
I'm not
allegedly made a
supposed
hole in
to
one, I saw.
mention or talk to.
Okay. So Jason and I will get together over the next week. I would like to have a follow-up meeting in August unless there's objection.
No.
Just-
You object?
Well,
He objects.
no,
Okay, fine.
I'm sorry. You finished your slides? I just wanted.
More or less.
Okay, you want me to go with it? Yep. So, I'm sorry, to your question was, do we all agree? Yes.
We already established, yes.
Yep. So, we had talked about with those schools, the only thing we need to leave on the table is bringing this, when we talk about 2047, I think would be these 10 schools, let alone that we've got other schools that need to be done, right? That our CIP funding is what, I mean, it's underfunded to get these schools done, to bring them into some fashion of the next 10 or 15 years. Because by that time, we're gonna have the schools behind it. Now, I know I'm putting a lot on us, but we had talked about the fact that we were gonna talk about that with you, right? So,
Well, we had said the staff was working on that over the summer. It would come back to us with a recommendation.
so we're meeting in 2 months.
3 in August.
So we're gonna meet in August.
Correct.
So we can talk about that then.
Yes, and then we'll also be looking at where we stand with Bird and everything, just where we're standing and all that. We need to have a normal conversation.
Because to Mr. Radford's point, if we're talking about BCAT, then we talk about, the other 2 would be part of. So there's a lot going on here. We're talking about maybe doing the solar for the 3 schools or some fashion. And if that's the case, then that moves our schedule up a good bit, right? And that's okay. If not, then we're back to the CIP funding.
Well, no, that's why I said I don't think we need to be waiting too long between meetings because we need to, we went 19 months or whatever it is with no meetings. But I think the magnitude of what we're talking about, we need to be meeting more frequently. And I think that every 3 months is not unreasonable unless there's an objection to that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Everybody got a calendar out, or are we just going to shoot from the hip on this one later on?
I mean, let's
go.
Let's pull out calendars and schedule
Let's do
something, get something on before we go. Is that good with
Get
everybody?
away from.
Come on. I mean, y'all like coming here or because We're here on the 10th of August.
Fine.
Mr. O'Donnell, do you know if we have a whole lot on that agenda?
Not yet.
Well, good, make sure
Is
there's
it
not
the
a whole.
same setup to where y'all don't have an evening meeting?
Yes. Our first meeting of each month, there's no evening meeting. Or we can move you to the 24th and sandwich in between.
Ken, what day does
I'm
school
just
start?
First meeting of the month,
Yeah,
we
what's
don't
the-
have night.
August 12th is first day of school.
Would,
Is
That's
it, yeah, what
okay
does that
with
do
you?
to you? Does that,
Have they got back to school nights that week? Or is it the next week?
They could have some, like meet your teacher kind of thing, but I don't think much that you all would need to be involved in.
Okay.
August 10th is fine with me.
August 10th, going once, going
5,
twice, 5:30.
5:30.
I gotta have time to eat, my friend. All right, then, Mr. Moretz, do you want to adjourn your side?
before I do that, any
Oh, I'm
closing
sorry.
comments from?
Mr. Butzer, this will be your last opportunity to make some comments. in this.
No, I want to leave on a good note.
Hey, let's throw this
Done
out.
enough to be a pain in the ass.
If things don't go well, we can hire you as a consultant. So
Hey, there you go. I can be back.
so we better get it done.
You gonna pay for it?
I'm expensive.
No, thanks again for getting together. I know, look, we all, I think at the end of the day, we all want the same things. I mean, it's going to be hard for 10 people to agree on 100% everything, but, I definitely feel like we're moving it forward a little bit. I certainly will iron out the committee. I mean,
It's fine.
you know what they'll say, when you want something to die, send it to a committee. We can't have that happen here. I mean,
Give them their objective and timeline.
PR support to get, to get this, our local legislators involved. So, with that being said, on the Roanoke School Board side, meeting adjourned.
Okay. I guess I should have asked you any comments from our side. We're good.
Okay. I'm gonna have a motion to adjourn.
I got a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Multiple seconds. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mrs. Coco? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes. Thank you.
Right.